and welcome to Poker with GPA. I am your host, GPA, and welcome to episode number 3 of Poker with GPA. I'm psyched today to got a great show for you today. Our guest today is going to be Bernard Lee, who is the voice of poker in the Merrimack Valley. He finished 13th in the 2005 World Series of Poker main event. He's earned over $2.5 million playing tournaments. He also has 10 titles. And he also is an author. He also has, and we'll talk about his book that just came out recently during the podcast as well. And we will talk about his podcast as well as his YouTube page. So I want to welcome Bernard Lee. Bernard, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Actually, in 2008, I believe it was, Card Player deemed me the voice of New England poker. Basically, having done so much in the area, whether it's my podcast, hosting ESPN shows, things of that nature. So back then, fortunate that that's what they kind of deemed me as.
I like that name though. I think it fits you well.
Yeah. I mean, I've always used it as kind of a moniker that I have, and I'm more than happy to carry that badge. I mean, I've done a lot in the New England area, for better or worse. I've lived here, went to college up here, and never left. Was spokesperson for Foxwoods for 2 years. Done some work up in New Hampshire. As I said, worked with ESPN down in Connecticut. So New England has definitely been my home for well over 2 decades, and now probably almost 3 decades, and enjoy it, and more than happy to take on that role.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you went to college in Boston. You graduated from Harvard.
That's right.
Harvard graduate, correct?
Yeah.
What made you want to play poker? How did you get started in poker?
Yeah, so poker wasn't in the the future job plans when I started the whole thing. I've been playing poker all my life. My father and his brothers and his friends would play during the holidays. So I've said this on a bunch of interviews. When they would come over, they would send the kids up to bed. Well, I would get out of bed and sit at the top of the stairs and listen to them banter back and forth about hands. And, that's kind of like a rite of passage of becoming a man, kind of. That's the way I envisioned it when you were 6, 7 years old. So I always wanted to learn how to play poker. My dad taught me how to play, played in high school, had a regular game in college. And then in 92, when Foxwoods opened up, and they opened up in February, I went right as I graduated with a friend of mine, and we went down there. And to show you how early on in the process, there's like probably 7-8 million people who have been to Foxwoods, maybe even more now. And so you can tell by the number on your ID card what number you went in. So most people would have a number in the millions. Mine is in the 100,000s. And you have to remember that like probably 10, 15,000 people were employees right out of the gate, right? So like I was one of the first in there, have done very well, won 3 titles there, back to back years at the World Poker Finals. And I won my first in 2006, 2007, 2008. And in 2009, the media told me that if I win an event in 2009 at the World Poker Finals, it could set a record of somebody winning a title at the exact same poker festival 4 years in a row.
Wow.
It has been done 3 times other places, but I'm not really sure if that was really a record or not. Somebody just mentioned it to me, and I actually final tabled one there, but unfortunately couldn't win it. But Foxwoods was my home for a long time, and like I said, it was where I started learning how to play poker. But I went to the real world. I mean, I didn't quit my job. I didn't quit, education. I got my bachelor's in 92. I got my master's in 94 in biology. Ended up going into business for biotech with initial thoughts of being a doctor, but ended up going into biotech world. Went back to business school at Babson College here. It's a top entrepreneurial program here in Massachusetts, and worked for a medical device company for almost 10 years. But always played poker, had a home game. And, everyone talks about the moneymaker effect, and it definitely had an effect on me, but it didn't have an effect on me playing poker. It had an effect on me playing tournament poker. I had been playing already, and so I knew it. When we went down to Foxwoods, I would play 7-card stud. I remember opening up Doyle Brunson's Super System, reading the 7-Cut Start chapter, Chip Reese. I made photocopies of it. It's funny to talk about that. Like, you make photocopies of it, you don't look on it digitally, but
Right.
made copies of it, highlighted it yellow, highlighted it blue, highlighted green, like really got to have note cards on the whole thing. It's funny, I found the note cards about a month ago, just kind of cleaning up. And just really loved poker. And my friend would play this weird game where you would only get 2 cards, but 5 community cards, and called it Texas Hold'em. I was like, what in the world is Texas Hold'em? I don't get it. But in 2002, actually was when I really got into trying to learn the game well. And that was the year that Robert Varconi won the World Series main event. Going backwards in time, heads up with Julian Gardner. But there was a gentleman who ended up finishing in 6th place, Russell Rosenblum. And after he got knocked out, he's a lawyer from the Maryland area, I think, DC area. After he got knocked out, he went over to the commentary booth, the equivalent of Norm and Lon in today's world. It was with Gabe Kaplan. And he was kind of giving his take on the hand. Remember, there was no hold cams back then.
Yeah.
And so as he was talking about it, he says, I think the guy's got something like Queen Jack. And I literally went, how in the world does he know that guy's got Queen Jack? And wouldn't you know it, the guy flipped over Queen Jack. And I just went, wow, you think you know this game? You have no idea how to play this game. I'm talking about myself, not Russell, obviously. And that was the moment where I just said, you know what? I better start learning this game a little bit more than I think I do. And so I really started studying the game. Back then, there weren't as many books and training programs as there were. So I literally read every single book you can imagine, whether it's Skolansky, whether it's McAvoy, whether it's Brunson, whether it's Cloutier, all these guys who wrote books. I read them all. I literally read. My wife jokingly said I should have a PhD in poker, because every night I was sitting there reading a book. And so that's kind of how I started. 2003, Moneymaker does what he does. And then I'm like, I want to play in the World Series main event. I tried to qualify in 2004. Back then, remember, for everyone, the Poker Stars, Paradise Poker, everyone was having sites and trying to qualify. Yeah, so I tried to qualify in 2004, but in all honesty, didn't make it. Really tried to do what I could do, but it just didn't work. And so I really studied satellites very hard. It's a very funny scenario that I actually worked on satellites. And in 2005, I qualified. Went to the World Series in 2005. And for better or worse, people who don't know, it's 15 years ago, so people may not know. If you watched the World Series back in 2005, that was the year that Joe Hashim won. Yeah. I was featured a bunch of times. I had the story of my kids. My wife almost died giving birth to our second child, almost bled out. And then I had the pictures of my kids on my in front of my chips, and I would kiss them before all ins. And I got very deep. Yeah. So I got very, very deep. Yeah. And I mean, everyone remembers that kind of story, and I think a lot of people, once I put the pictures of my kids down, because I still do it. It's not a gimmick. It was something I did. I did that for a couple of years. So it wasn't like, oh, he just started doing it and people thought it was cute. It was, my son was born in 2003. And when he was born, I started this. And, it's a very stressful thing for people who play poker. You understand, but now take it to a level where tens of thousands, if not hundreds or millions, are on the line. It's stressful, and you go all in. I don't care. You're never 100% to win.
What was it like when you first sat down in 2005 and you saw your first hand in the World Series of Poker main event? What was going through your mind then?
It was my first World Series event, just to put in perspective. So some people are like, oh, what a lucky guy. And it's true. Don't get me wrong. I mean, how incredible. I turned that 13th place finish into a career. But I don't want to say I was nervous. I had played in a lot of events leading up to that. I played in a 10K World Poker Tour event. I had qualified via satellite. So I was more excited than nervous. We had been leading up to it. There's a pretty I don't know if it's famous, but it's a picture that they had a Poker Stars party the night before. Moneymaker, Raymer were there, the two previous winners. And I took a picture in between them. And as I kept getting deeper and deeper, I was like, this could be a really prophetic picture. I mean, this is scary, you know, like 03, 04, or 05. So I was really excited. One of my friends was playing in it as well. So as I said, I wasn't really nervous. I was excited.
When did you know that, or when did you think that you knew you were going to go a long way in that tournament? When do you start thinking like, oh my God, there's only 100 people left now. I've got a shot at this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. One, getting deep, and then one, potentially winning it, right? So I had an incredible day one, a really incredible day one. So back then, we only had 10,000 chips.
Mm-hmm.
We played an hour and 40-minute levels. Okay, so it was a little different than what it is today. And you had 10,000 chips. You started out at 25, 50, maybe 25, 25, whatever. We played, I think it was 8 levels in that first day. So we didn't finish till like 3 or 4 in the morning. It was exhausting.
Wow.
Starting out with 10,000 chips, I had over 60,000 after day one. So if you put that in perspective of today, and I think they keep raising it, but I think we start with 60,000 chips now in the main event.
Oh wow.
That's like ending. That's like ending day one with 360,000 chips or 375,000 chips. That's unheard of. That is a cash. Like, unless you do something really, really dumb or get really coolered, which, don't get me wrong, can easily happen. Mm-hmm. That's a great shot at a cash. Now, I also put in perspective that it was more like the equivalent of almost at the end of day two. That, because remember, we played 8 levels at day one, right? And you play 10 levels after 2 days in the World Series now. So that's like kind of having 375 after day two, where you have to get through day 3, and the beginning of day 4 usually breaks the money. So that was when I left that day, and then we saw it after. I think there were 3 day ones that year. I was around 100th with 2,000 people remaining.
Wow.
So 5,619 players started.
Mm-hmm.
There were about 2,000. I want to even say like it was 1,900 after day one. And I was like 100th. So
you're in the top 5%.
Yeah, I was doing really well. So I knew I was cashing. That wasn't going to be a question. The question was, how deep could I get? But I think I never looked ahead. I said, let's just get to the cash first. Day two, I want to say we played another like 7, 8 levels, and went from 60,000 to like 100,000. And we came back day 3 needing only to knock out like 8 players. Mm-hmm. It was really short. And so, I wouldn't want to say I was able to take advantage of the bubble per se, but people were afraid to play the bubble.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Once you got close, at the end of day 2, at the beginning of day 3, did you start playing more aggressive, knowing that some people just want to cash and make the minimum cash so they get their money back, or did you lay back a little bit?
It was kind of a mixture of both. You really kind of saw the opportunity when it was. I definitely did raise when I was in late position, and it was unopened to me. I wouldn't want to say like, I don't want to lie and say like, I had like 9-4 offsuit and I raised. I don't think I did that, but I think I definitely did raise with like Queen Jack and, the hands that aren't outrageous. But I still remember I had a conversation with the gentleman next to me, and we all there was no one at our table who had like two chips, right? Everyone had enough chips. And remember, we only needed to knock out like 5, 6, 7 players. And at the beginning, a couple of people got knocked out. So you were literally like 3 people away from getting knocked out. And so one of the guys next to me, he's like, wow, it's crazy, huh? Like, I mean, there's so few hands that I'm going to play. And I said to him, well, why even play a hand at this point? Like, if your goal is to cash, remember, let's understand what the goal is. The goal is not, I want to win this, so I want to get as many chips as possible. The goal at that moment in time was to cash. That's what he said. He goes, yeah, 100%. I'm not thinking about winning this. I want to cash. I go, okay, well then fold every hand. He goes, well, I can't fold every hand. I said, okay. And I said, after that moment, the flop came out, and it was I think it was ace, like 7-4, let's say. And I said to him, we weren't in the hand, they were playing the hand. And I said to him, I said, what if you had ace king here? What would you do? He goes, oh, well, I would raise. I go, well, that's the flop. He goes, well, I'd make a continuation bet. Or maybe he didn't. That phrase probably, that wording probably wasn't even in the vernacular back then, but I'd make a bet. Right. And I said, okay, I go all in. What do you do? He goes, well, I guess I have to call. And I said, well, I just flipped over pocket sevens for a set of sevens. And you saw it in his face. He was sick. He was like, oh my God, that could happen. I said, of course it could happen. And you're out. You're out, by the way. Like, and if your goal is to make the money, you're out. Remember, the World Series main event, for everyone who hasn't had the fortunate opportunity to play it, is a very unique event. Not only is it the event that everyone dreams of playing, everyone dreams of playing on that stage. Yeah. Right. And I'm fortunate to have played on that stage. Right. But it is an event. This is the only event in the world that everyone is on the phone after they make it through day one. There's nothing with day one. You don't get anything. You don't get a popsicle. You get nothing. You get a bag. You get a bag to put your chips in. Yeah. You have to pay for that too. It's not like they gave it to you, right? You get a bag to put your chips in, and that's it. You got a piece of paper that says you have this many chips. That's all you get. Yet the entire room is on the phone calling their friends and family saying, I made it through day one of the main event. What does that have anything to do with anything, right? Like, don't get me wrong. It's not like I didn't do it either. But what does that matter, right? I mean, I've had a friend who introduced me to somebody, and they said, oh, yeah, Bernard plays poker, and he's played at the World Series. He goes, oh, yeah, really? One of my friends played in the main event last year. He made it through day one. Have you ever done that? And I just kind of laughed. I was like, I've done it. Little father. Yeah. I've done it about four or five times. Actually, making through day one probably 7 or 8 times. But anyway, so it's definitely one of those moments in time, the World Series main event, where it's just different. And so making the cash is something that just you can't fathom sometimes. And people want to make it so badly, right? To make it to the money. So when I told him this story, he literally was sick to his stomach. And remember, we're 5 minutes away from cashing, and for him to say, I made the money in the 2005 World Series main event, that's to some people as big as winning a tournament. Now, right? They'll always be able to say it.
Wouldn't that be like double them? Wouldn't that be like 20,000?
No. Back then it was just min cash. It was just min cash. It was like 10K. It was just min cash.
Just get your money back.
Total min cash.
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay.
So about a hand or two later, I raised, and he looked down at ace king, and he literally showed them. He goes, "You freaking freaked me out," and he folded them. So like, did I take advantage of it? No, not necessarily exactly. But I had my moments where, so like I said, I wasn't raising every hand, but I definitely had my moments. I picked up some chips, and we broke the money bubble fairly early. And I had already analyzed my entire table. I knew everybody on the table. I wrote down all the notes of everything. And of course, what happens? They tap me on the shoulder and they say, you got to go over there. I'm like, oh man. But so that was definitely the first moment, like I said, was making it through day one, where I knew I had a shot to get deep. And then when we got down to the final 18, so I just on my podcast, I just spoke with Joe Hebert, who won the 2020 US bracket, the domestic bracket of the main event. Sure. And he just won Gulf Coast Poker Player of the Year. And we were talking about it. And 2005, again, we're going back in history. 2004, the World Series main event was at Binion's downtown. Mm-hmm. Between 2004 and 2005, Harrah's, now it's Caesars, but Harrah's bought the right to the WSOP. And then they bought, and the name and the horseshoe brand. So they brought the WSOP to the Rio for the first time ever. So their tribute back to Binions was the final 27 would go back to Benny's bullpen and play the final 2 days, 27 down to 9 down to the winner. And I was very fortunate to get to be one of those 27. I'm one of the last 27 players to ever play at Binions for a World Series event. And, didn't think about it going in. The last several days, I was always one of the shorter stacks, but just always survived. But when we got down to 18 players, that was the moment. We went to dinner. And I will tell you, that was a moment where it just kind of hit me like, if you just go by pure math, I'm a better than 5% chance to actually win this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I was chip leader or anything like there's 18 left. Just use every person as a single person. 100 into 18, it's like 20, somewhat a little better than 20%. I'm sorry, a little better than 5%. I apologize. I meant 20 players, 5%. That was a moment where I went, wow, I could potentially win it. And so obviously I didn't. I got 5 outed on the river to end up finishing 13th, but it's definitely an incredible week. I always told my wife, if I could put together a week, who knows what could happen, and that's where it happened.
Let me go back a little bit before you finished 13th. Was there a time when sponsors came up to you and started wanting you to put like that patch on your jacket or
so I had qualified through Poker Stars.
Okay.
So I'd already had stars all over me. Okay, so that's kind of how back then, if you qualified on their site via satellite or however, they gave you this massive bag full of stuff, clothes, hats, not patches. It wasn't patches back then. You actually had the clothes. I still have the bag. It was an incredible bag. It really was. It's so funny. It's so big that my daughter uses it for softball. Like she puts all of her softball, her bats, her like bow net, everything in there because it's so big and it's a rolly. It was an I used it for many years, still used it. And so you didn't really have the opportunity for someone to come up to you because you're already patched up.
Right. So it would be different for someone who paid in for themselves or something.
Yeah, different story. Then at that point, stars or whoever would have. I mean, I've played in some events where that has happened and I've gotten money, or I've known people who've gotten money that right after the United States Poker Championship, I made it pretty deep. I want to say I got like 17th or something, or 18th or whatever. And if you made it to that final day, they were giving you, I want to say it was like $5,000 every single time you showed up on TV.
Wow.
So you just had to show up on TV with their, full tilt or whatever, and they dropped $5,000 because, it was just, there weren't many players left. Unfortunately, I had already signed something prior to that. I had gotten some recognition. So a website signed me before I played in that event. I was already patched up with them. Didn't make as much as I could have if Full Tilt signed me.
That was smart on their part to sign you early.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if I was going to do something or not, but I did get deep, and I was on TV a good amount. So, I mean, also it's because ESPN had already covered me in 2005, and now a year later I'm doing it again, and so it was a good thing. Yeah.
After that last hand, when you lost the last hand, obviously, were you happy or were you disappointed, or what were your feelings then?
So the second it happened, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this much fun that I was having was now over. I had King 7, flopped the king. It was King 6-3. Check raised all in, but I was a fairly short stack. And Aaron Cantor, who had a big stack and was just on fire that day, called with Queen 6, second pair. I don't blame him at all. I think it was the right. And to be honest, I wanted the double up. It was a jack on the turn and a 6 on the river. And I literally collapsed. And it was really bad. People say it was karma. It wasn't karma. When the jack turned, I thought it was a king. And so I was like, like that, thinking the hand was over and he was drawing dead. And it wasn't that I was getting cocky. It was just, I really thought it was a king. Sure. So somebody had said like, karma bit you. I was like, no, I wasn't being cocky. I really thought that the hand was over. So I collapsed down to the ground. I really did, because I was so disappointed. And it was just sad that I wasn't playing anymore. It wasn't about the money. If it was about the money, I would have never played that hand. I mean, I guess it was a limp around, so I didn't have a choice, but I 400,000 was 13th, 600,000 was 12th. So if it really was about the money, I would have just kind of folded my way to 12.
Sure.
But obviously at that point, you're trying to make the final table. It's a little bit different. I've had this discussion with a lot of people who've gotten deep like that. You know, when you're at 50, 60, 70,000, every pay jump is a big deal, right? 70,000 to 95, 70,000 to 85,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But once you get to the point, I still remember the last day we were at 175,000 guaranteed, I think it was. At this point, every time there was a pay jump on this day, I'm not talking about the main event, final table, when it's like $1 million each pay jump. When you're at this day, it's almost like Monopoly money. You go from 200,000 to 300,000. It's a lot of money, but because the goal is to make the final table, you're not even thinking about it. I really wasn't even thinking about it. And, you look back now and you're like, wow, that's a lot of money. $200,000. I mean, I've only had probably 7 or 8 cashes bigger than that. And what the hell? It would have been great to pick up that extra money, but you're not thinking about it. It's a very weird day when it comes to that. Like I focused more on the money on day like 3 when I was like, wow, I'm 25 to 35,000, that kind of thing, than worrying about 200 to 300,000.
When did you look back and say, wow, I can't believe that I finished 13th, like out of so many people that played the tournament? When did that sink in? Like there was because that's obviously an awesome achievement to finish 13th. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to tell you, it took a while. It was pretty disappointing. I mean, it was really pretty disappointing. It wasn't the fact that I didn't win. I really wanted to make that final table. I really, if I had won that hand, I really think I made the final table. I was a survivor. I mean, it was crazy how, like, I want to say when there was like 180 left, I was like 145th. When there was 57 left, I was 52nd. When there was 27 left, I was 22nd.
Oh.
When there was 18 left, I think I was 17th. Like I just hung on for dear life. And had I won that hand, I would have doubled up, and I probably would have been like 8th in chips with 13 left to go. And I would have grinded. So I don't remember exactly when I was happy, but it took a while. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't like I flew home and I was like, this is awesome. You know what I mean? I was fortunate that I had a gathering of a bunch of my buddies and all that kind of stuff afterward, but it took a while. It was pretty disappointing.
Can you watch it now? Can you watch it on TV now?
Yeah. I watch it. Remember back then, it came out a few months after.
Well, that's true.
So it didn't happen that day. So it came out a few months after. And by the way, you have no idea how it's going to turn out, right? Like every time I won a hand, I would jump for joy and I'd scream and I'd pump my fists and all that kind of stuff. Like my sunglasses would go flying. You could be made out to look like a fool. Like, what is the big deal? Why is this guy like, I could have honestly been made out to look like a fool. But 441 Productions, Matt Morantz and all those guys, Norman Chad, to be honest, they really didn't make fun of me. They really made me out to be like this amateur family guy, working hard, Harvard grad. Congratulations to him for getting so deep. What a great story. And so you kind of watched it with a little bit of bated breath because you really didn't know. You wanted to turn out well, but I'm sure people have watched and been like, they made me look like a fool. Right. That's the storyline that they take, and so it's the ultimate reality show, by the way. Watching the World Series main event is the ultimate reality show because you get, it's about survival and you're trying to make it, and it's real life. There's no script here. Right. They don't force you to play for an idol so you can make it. I'm not poo-pooing Survivor. That's not my point. My point is that that's still somewhat scripted, right? This is not scripted. It's literally you're playing cards and whatever happens. And so to me, it's always the ultimate reality show.
How many times have you played the main event since 2005?
I've pretty much played it every year. I want to say 1 year I couldn't because I had to get back from my kids, maybe 2 years. It's so funny is because of COVID, I don't remember anymore. You know what I mean? Like I would have been able to say 2 years ago, like I've played it every year or I missed 1 year, but because of COVID, I can't even remember anymore what I did and what I didn't. But I want to say I've played it like 10 or 11 times.
Wow, so that's gonna be good. Have you had any other long? I know you have had some. You finished in the cash quite a few times.
Yeah, I've cashed. I think it's 4 times. I did get pretty. The last time I cashed, I got pretty deep. I got 500th in 2017, and there was like 7,000 people in, and it wasn't. I got coolered. Also, it was. It was it was just unfortunate. Like I had like 40 bigs, and guy raised from the cutoff. I had sevens on the button, almost re-raised them, decided not to. Small blind, big blind came for the ride, and the flop was really kind of dream flop. It was ace seven deuce.
Oh wow.
And so you're just like, God, if somebody has an ace, this is going to be
Yeah, you're gonna
gin.
double up at least.
Yeah, yeah, or at least get at least
A little more.
50% of my stack, right? So checked around to me. I decided to check. Turn came an 8. Small blind let out, big blind called, cutoff raised. And, you know, you look backwards in time, the 8 could have potentially saved me, but I shoved, small blind, big blind, snap folded, cutoff, snap called.
Oh.
And I was like, that's not good.
No.
And I'm hoping that it's like ace 8. And I said, do you have aces? He goes, yeah. And I just went, God Lord. Is it, by the way, it's the exact same hand that Gail Bauman knocked out Vanessa Selpt with the quad sevens, right? Aces and sevens. But anyway, but same year too. So, yeah, it was just unfortunate because had he had kings, again, I don't know if I double up, but at least I get a significant number of chips, right? And so that was just unfortunate because, you know, had that hand worked out and I have 80, 90 bigs with 500 left, I make it through that day. And there's probably only 200 people left. And then you don't know. I'm not saying I'm going to win it, but I think I have a little bit more experience than a lot of these people playing in the main event at that stage. And so that was a little bit of a bummer. But I love playing in the main event. It's a different beast altogether. I'm going to knock on wood because I don't want to jinx it, but I've only not made it through day one twice.
Wow.
I would say the second year I played, I didn't make it through day one, like in the last level, but remember we played like 7 or 8 levels, right? So like in today's world, I would have made it through day one. One of the years, it was just literally cooler after cooler after cooler. Like flop top 2, guy had bottom set. I flopped top and bottom, the guy flopped top 2. I had a set, the guy had a flush draw, hits his flush. I had aces, the guy flops queen jack on a queen jack board. Like it was unbelievable. And it makes sense, right? I've played in it 11, 12 times. That's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. So thank God it didn't happen multiple times, but it happened that one time. And I was out like level 3 and there's nothing I could have done. Like I remember, I think David Peters, who's been on my show a bunch of times, he was at my table and he still remembers. He goes, that was ridiculous. Like every single hand that you could have gone wrong went wrong. And then the other one was 4th level. I still remember it. I had a pretty good stack. I think we started out with 50K. I probably had 75, 80K and raised. The guy re-raised me. I re-raised back. He re-raised again. I shoved. He tanked forever. And he was like, how can Bernard Lee not have aces here? Oh my God. There's no way that Bernard Lee's bluffing here. There's no way he has ace king. There's no way he has queens. I'm hoping in some respects that he has kings with me. So right now he's telling me he has kings. I mean, it doesn't matter. I have aces, right? So it doesn't matter what he has. But he's like, I know. But eventually he goes, I can't fold kings. Bang, calls. And he goes, do you have aces? I go, yeah, I have aces. I mean, like you literally walk through the entire logic. Of course I wouldn't do this without aces. I have aces. Flop comes, I want to say it was 2 spades. The third was the king of spades. But I had the ace of spades. I swear to you, I wasn't even nervous when the king came out. I was like, there's no way the poker gods are going to knock me out aces versus kings in day one of the main event. There's just no way.
Right.
Like, so it'll be a little bit of a flutter of the heart, but like a spade or an ace will hit on the river. I'm sure of it. It's amazing how confident I was. And when like the 8 of diamonds rolled out, I was like, are you effing kidding me? Like, did this really effing just happen? Like, how can that be? Beside that, I've always made day 2. If I can make it through day 2, I usually cash. Day 2 is always, in my opinion, my moving day, even though you don't cash until day 4.
Right.
If I can make it through day 2, I usually make it. So again, I'm knocking on wood because I don't want it to be like, you just played it and you got knocked out on day 3. But
how many
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How many times that you've played in the main event have you gotten in by satellite?
Many times, to be honest. So I sometimes play satellites as like kind of like tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really play it so that I can play in the main event. I play it to basically kind of like win chips and then use that to play in events, So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, because it's not like, so it's easier for, I don't want to sound like obnoxious, like, oh, I could play in the main event all the time, but I am a professional poker player. So this is what I do, right? So it's like asking how many World Series circuit events have you played in? Like, honestly, I could never tell you that answer.
You've played in a lot. I can tell you.
Yeah, hundreds probably.
Yeah.
But the point of it is that I would have, if I was flying out for the main event, I was playing in it. It wasn't if I satellited or right. I didn't satellite, I was playing in it. So my point is that how many times did I satellite in? I don't know, because I was playing in it no matter what. If I won a satellite, it wasn't like now I can play in the main event. I was going to play in it anyway. You know what I mean? So like, I can't say like I satellite in. The first one, without a question, I wasn't playing in it otherwise. The WPTs at Foxwoods early on and a Borgata, I was, and the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure, I was not playing in it unless I satellited in. So those are different. But once I turned pro in 2007, there are a lot of times I played the satellites so I can help my bankroll, but I was going to probably play in it anyway. And that's kind of, satellites have kind of become my little thing. It's why I wrote my latest book is on satellites. And so, one of the things in my book that I love about it is that there's actually a whole chapter on real life scenarios.
Right.
And what I did was I took real life situations that I lived through so you can experience them without having to experience them and get busted out. Do you see what I'm saying? So like you actually can read, like I write it so that at the end of the description, I say, what would you do? And then you turn the page and figure out what happened, because some people may do something different than what I think is optimal for satellite strategy.
And I want to talk about your book, Poker Satellite Success, but I have one question before we go to that. And that question is, what made you decide that you go be a professional poker player? What was the turning? Because obviously you had won the $400,000 and you've won you've done well. And just so people know, you've won over $2.5 million in tournaments, and I'm sure you've others that haven't been reported. But what made you decide, okay, I'm settled now. I'm financially, I know I can do this full time. I know I can be a professional poker player.
So obviously that deep run, I caught the bug, right? So like I suddenly have the bug, I want to play, etc. The following year, I won my first major event. It was at the World Poker Finals. I won the $5,000 No Limit Hold'em Championship for like 375 or something along those lines. And I really felt like I could do this, but give my wife a lot of credit that she said, you're not going to win every time. Like, you shouldn't even know the statistics with regards to variance and all that, but she was right. Obviously, it just doesn't work out all the time. So she basically was like, if you're going to do this, you need to get a job of some sort on the side, whether it's poker media, consulting, whatever. And mind you, I was working for a Fortune 500 company in marketing and new business development. I was director level. So like,
you were doing well.
For better or worse, I was making pretty decent living. Mm-hmm. Now my wife is a doctor, so it's not like she doesn't make income for the family as well. Right. But it took me 2 years after 2005 and started my radio show. I had been writing for ESPN, writing for the Boston Herald, did some teaching for WPT boot camp. So like you put all of these things together, suddenly I was actually making some decent money. And I showed my wife, I go, here, like, let me look how much I'm making. And I'm doing this all doing poker. And I still remember her. She was like, oh my God, are you really going to do this? And decided to take a crack at it. Decided I'm going to leave my job right before the main event in 2007. I don't know why that was the specific moment, but that's kind of the moment I had in my head. The irony is that in May of that year, Foxwoods had its first ever mega stack.
Oh, wow.
Back then, that wasn't as big of a deal.
No, now it's all of them are mega stacks.
Yeah, now all of them are mega stacks. But back then, so people were flying in from Chicago to play this event. Like, and that sounds very funny because now, yeah, so people would fly in from California, but back then that didn't happen. And we ended up chopping it 3 ways. And so that was like almost a 6-figure score.
Right.
I remember when I came home with that one, my wife was like, okay.
And
She's like, you can quit. Yeah.
Sorry. We should mention also that you've done well in more than just Texas Hold'em, because I saw you've cashed in other games as well. You're not just
Deuce to 7 is kind of my game at the World Series of Poker. It just fits my style very well. I've been very fortunate to talk with Billy Baxter, who's kind of the king of no limit, or the godfather of low ball. Mm-hmm. And ever since I started playing Deuce to 7, I just really get the game. And I've actually done a column for ESPN, a column for Card Player, a video for Card Player. And I final tabled Deuce to 7 3 times. I finished runner-up a couple of years ago, which still gives me heartache over it. So yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate. I play 7-card stud. I do play the mixed games. I'm not going to be playing in the 50K Poker Players Championship anytime soon, but I would play in a $1,500 horse event at the World Series if the opportunity presented itself. And what I mean by that is that there aren't other events that would conflict. Right. I wouldn't say that would be my number one priority. Mm-hmm. So like when I set my schedule, I look at all the events, and ironically, Deuce to 7, that's my priority. Like, so if there's a no limit event that day, I'll actually play the Deuce to 7, because you don't get many Deuce to 7 shots. Right. And as I said, I final tabled it 3 times. So to me, that's my best shot at winning a bracelet. And that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is for me to take home a bracelet one day.
And obviously, your book that came out this year, Poker Satellite Success, came out this year. And that's a great thing for people, because if they can spend less money to get into the tournaments, then it's a bonus for them. So tell me about the book. Tell me about how that came about, and something. Give me some insight to the book.
Yeah, so I'll kind of show it to everyone here. That's the book. I helped design the cover. I really like it. It's like there are chips here, and then it explodes into money all the way up here. I like it. So again, satellites have always been something that I feel like I've done well at, and I've really developed a strategy to kind of do that. And I had been doing a lot of presentations. A lot of people were, because I had taught for the WPT boot camp and WSOP Academy, and I've had dozens of private students as well. Literally, I've had a couple of students who just wanted to work on satellites, which is kind of funny, but that's what they have. I have one student right now who I'm working a lot with, not exclusively, but a lot on satellites, because they want to play in the main event. And back in 2014, Jonathan Little, who many of you know is a prolific writer, yes. He opened up he wanted to do a super system book, and he called it Excelling at No Limit Hold'em. And he contacted me. We're good friends. He's been on my show a bunch of times. And he contacted me and said, hey, would you be interested in writing a section for my book? I said, yeah. I was very honored that he'd want to do that, that he asked me to do that. And he said, what section would you be interested in writing? And I said, it's funny. I actually been presenting this satellite seminar multiple times over the last several months. I already have an outline. I already have a presentation. I could write on that. And he goes, perfect, do it. So it was like a 10,000, 12,000 limit words, and wrote it. There was definitely stuff I could have added to it, but kind of made it concise and everything. The book came out in 2015. It was a very well-received book. And for better or worse, my chapter was one of the best received chapters in the book. I had a lot of people come up to me and ask me to sign the book, texting me or Twittering me saying, hey, I love this section, et cetera, et cetera. People showing me pictures of them winning a seat because of my book. So my chapter. And so I was really happy about that. And in 2000, hold on, I'm backtracking. I want to say 2018, I was at the World Series, and the publishers, which is D&B Poker, they were there. They always have a booth. And he came up to me and said, hey, any interest in ever writing a book exclusively on satellites? And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, why wouldn't I want to write another book? I've written 2 books already. Why wouldn't I want to write another book? And we sat down, figured it out. You got 50,000 words, go for it. And there you go. You start writing it out. The goal was to bring it out in 2020 at the World Series. Of course, COVID had other plans. And then we were going to bring it out this year. So it's been ready for a while. I want to say like it would have been ready for 2020. But once we found out of COVID, we kind of slowed down. Everybody slowed down. We finalized it, I want to say like October, November of last year. Got back to work on it, and then released it April of this year when the World Series was announced for October. And that's kind of how it's come about. And
now's the perfect time for people to go out and get the book, because
I'm actually writing a column in Card Player right now about it. There was a so one of the first sections I wrote when I wrote this book was ironically the last chapter. I mentioned it earlier. It's real life scenarios. So there's 8 scenarios that I explain word for word of like how the situation happened. And so I'll describe the situation. I first talk about some of the key concepts that I'm going to go over. And those key concepts I have explained earlier in the book. And then I give you an example, and I state it all out. It's this satellite, you have this many chips, it's at this blind level. I try to describe some of the players. And then I go, now what would you do if you were in this spot? 12, I'm making it up, 12 left, 9 get seats. What would you do? And then afterward on the next page, I go, okay, this is what happened. Right? That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good or a bad thing, because there are a couple times this happened, I failed, I didn't get my seat. And then it's what I learned. So that was really literally the first chapter I wrote, because I wanted to do something like that in the chapter that I wrote for Jonathan, but I couldn't do it. Right. I actually had a couple of these already written, because in my mind, this was going to be something we were going to do, but we just didn't have room for it. So it was one of the first chapters, and I ended up having I actually had 10 examples, I think. I had 8 ended up being in the book. One of them, which I had to take out because it was somewhat similar to another one.
Right.
It's going to be in a column it's going to be an exclusive on Card Player. So I write for Card Player right now. So it's going to be in there. So I really enjoy that chapter. I think the chapters early on, concepts and the strategies and all that goes all the way through chapter 6, pretty much about half the book. But the second half of the book, I think, is very unique in the sense of, one, I have a chapter all on how to make deals in satellites. And people are like, deals?
I didn't even know you could.
Well, that's the thing. And so that's why I write this chapter, because if you're in a situation where somebody comes up to you and goes, I want to make a deal in a satellite, you might be like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean you can make a deal? Of course you can make a deal. Why couldn't you make a deal? If there's 5 seats that have 5,000, right? And then let's say that there's 3,000 left over for 6th place, and there's 7 of you left. Why can't you all just be like, hey, there's 28,000 in the prize pool. Why don't we all just take 4,000 and walk away?
There you go.
Why not? Why not? And somebody be like, yeah, but the 5,000 is a seat. Yeah, but somebody can give you $1,000. Right? Some people will be like, I don't want the seat. Just give me the cash. Right? At the World Series, they give you lammers. You just break up the lammers. What does that matter? So I think it's a really good section, because people never think about that. People don't even know about that. In all honesty, at the World Series, the majority of the satellites I've won have ended up being in a deal. And the funny thing is that they break at the end of level 12. And if you play it out, it usually happens on level 13 or 14. And that's why so many deals are made, because you've just gone on break and you come back and you're like, oh God, we only need 2 more people. And I'm a shorter middle stack and I lose 1 hand and I'm out. You know what I mean? So a lot of deals are made. Then the last 3 chapters, one is just other scenarios that you should consider, whether it's a survivor tournament or whether it's satellite progressions. Like at Foxwoods, they used to have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Poker Stars, they used to have like different levels to get through to get to the main event. You could jump in at level 3 or jump in at level 1. I give some practice examples because I have a few formulas in the book. And then the last section, like I said, real life scenarios, which again, a lot of people who have purchased the book, they call me on that or write me about that. They go, I love this part. I love this section. I mean, it's like I played in an event and now I really feel like I got 8 extra satellites under my belt without having to risk my own money. So.
And they can buy this book online on Amazon?
Yep, just go to Amazon. You can go to D&B Poker as well. I mean, really anywhere you want, but Amazon is where a lot of people have gotten it. And yeah, it's well received. When it first came out, it was #1 of new poker books out there. So
can you show the cover again? Can you show the book again?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So and the fortunate thing is, I'll cover it here so you can see it. And the nice thing is that the foreword was written by Chris Moneymaker. Obviously, like kind of the person who is the reason why we're all doing this, and he got in via a satellite. So Chris and I have become very good friends, and I was telling him about this book, and I said, Chris, it would really be really an honor for me if you would consider writing it, because I think it really makes a lot of sense because you got in on a satellite. And he didn't even flinch. He goes, yeah, sure. When does it due? Kind of thing. Yeah.
It was really good. I read it today. And it was really good. So he did really good.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's talk about your you have a podcast also.
Yep.
So tell me about your podcast and where people can listen to it, what it's about. Obviously about poker, but what's the angle that you're looking to guide the podcast?
Yeah. So my podcast is literally one of the oldest podcasts because it wasn't a podcast. It was a radio show. 14 years ago. Yeah. What the hell is a podcast? Right. I mean, 14 years ago, I'm not even sure if there was like iTunes, like I think it was like an iPod. It's so long ago, but my show, I had been writing for the Boston Herald for a couple of years in ESPN. And when I had just started thinking of going professional, my Boston Herald poker editor said, hey, we would talk every week, right? I'd submit my column. He'd like, tell me about the hand. Even though I wrote it, he wanted to kind of hear it from me because he thought it would bring it to life a little more. And then he would edit accordingly, because I was still a novice writer back then. I've been doing this for over a decade. It's a different story now, but back then I was still fairly a novice writer. And, the Boston Herald is still one of the top 25 papers in the country, or top 40, whatever. It's a huge paper. So, and right now I write for Metro West Daily News, which is a really big paper here in Massachusetts that's owned by USA Today. Oh, wow. And so, he said, you know what? I got to tell you something. I love your stories. You're a really good storyteller. I said, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. He goes, ever think about doing like a radio show? And literally I was like, what are you talking about? I don't have any journalism background or anything like that. He goes, I think you'd be really good at it. And so I put my name out to some of the stations in the area. And one of them, which was a big sports station, 1510, contacted me and said, hey, we're thinking about doing poker stuff. We know it's big. You interested in doing it? We'd like to have you do it. And so anyway, I was on there. I did it there. I've done it. Money Matters Radio Network, which is in this Massachusetts. So my show is actually a radio show. People just think it's like it's a podcast. It's actually on air in Massachusetts. Oh, wow. And it's been on air pretty much the entire time. But also in addition to that, it's been in Poker News. Right now it's in cardplayerlifestyle.com, which is owned by Robbie Straczynski. He and I started a kind of podcast family and my show is kind of like the flagship show on it. You can hear it on iTunes, or recently I have actually, like you are, I put it up on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are on there, please like and subscribe, like
Please
for
like and
everything.
subscribe my
Yeah, exactly. Here too. Hey, it's easy. Double click. You can click twice.
Yeah.
It's Bernard Lee Poker. Everything for me. If you search me on Bernard Lee Poker, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. So I just did an interview with. I actually did it a couple years ago, but it was Jack Binion, and it was really well received. Even Doyle Brunson put it up on Twitter saying, "Hey, you should really listen to this." So a few thousand people have listened to that, and so yeah, I mean, it's been a labor of love. I really enjoy it. I was trying to think the other day how many episodes that I've done. I mean, I've done pretty much one a week ever since I started. So obviously we're closing in on like 700, but there were some weeks, some years where I actually did multiple shows during the week because of like, we were reporting the World Series, and then I usually take off Christmas and Thanksgiving, that kind of stuff. So I would guess it's closing in on 750 episodes right now, but you just don't know. But yeah, it's one of the longest run. I mean, there's a lot of debate on whose is the longest running and all that stuff, but it's definitely one of the longest running shows out there. And I typically do a really quick segment on the news of what's been going on in the world of poker, but then the interview is usually a 2-part interview with some guest out there. And for better or worse, I have a lot of, I don't just do this as media. I have a lot of friends out there who I'm fortunate enough that are more than happy to come on. And I have a lot of connections with people. So when the November 9 was going on, I had more November 9 interviews than anyone in the industry, even Poker News, because some of the guys didn't show up to the presser. So I only had 3 people who didn't come on my show of the entire November 9 era. Only 3 of those November 9ers didn't come on. 2 of them because of language barriers, which, by the way, we still proposed. I will send you the questions in your language. You answer them. You answer them literally in your language, and I will have it translated. But they didn't want to do that. I did have it. A couple of the players, we did do that.
That's cool.
And then one player just did not want to come on because he was fearful that people would get strategy from him. And I said, we don't even have to talk poker. Just tell me about your background. But he kind of didn't want to come on. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm very fortunate that like I said, Joe Hebert, who just won, and then you have like YouTube people like Johnny Vibes and Rampage Poker, David Peters, who just won the U.S. Poker Open. He came on. Maurice Kandani, Tana Karn, who is Run Good Gear president. Brian Altman, who just won WPT Player of the Year. These are people who, and I get some celebrities who like coming on. Cheryl Hines has been on the show. Donnie Wahlberg has been on the show. Boston Rob from Survivor, he's been on the show. So I'm very fortunate that I get a lot of people like Daniel's playing GG right now for the WSOP, but he just won the Poker Go championship. So we just recently. So I just contacted him and he said, yeah, let's do it. We haven't gotten the time to schedule it just yet, but Daniel will come on. Chris Moneymaker just came on. He kicked off my 14th year anniversary. One episode I really like, I do this every year, is for people who follow him. His name is Richard Roper. He's one of the best film critics out there. He took over Siskel and Ebert when Ebert passed away. And when Siskel passed, I forget which one he took over for. Apologize, but he's a poker player. He loves playing poker. I've met him at a bunch of events in Chicago, and so every year for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, he comes on the week before the Academy Awards, and we do an Academy Awards show. Nothing to do with poker, by the way, nothing. But people like to bet. People watch movies, and I get so much feedback from that saying like, I love this show. I love like you talking about movies and him talking about movies. And it's just a fun show. We do it every year in a lot of respects for no reason whatsoever, but we just do it. And it's a lot of fun. And I have a lot of bracelet winners that come on. Brian Piccoli, who just won his second bracelet. He's coming on. Ryan Haggerty, who finished 4th in the U.S. domestic main event. He's going to be coming on. Like I said, we just try to put on a lot of people who, Chris Moorman, David Peters just won bracelets this summer, so they came on the show. So I'm very fortunate. I get a lot of people who have a wide range of involvement in the world of poker, whether they're a superstar, a rising star, or an industry professional. And based off of that, we have them come on the show. And some people I've brought on the show before they made it big. John Racner's one, for example, when he finished 2nd in the main event. I had him on the show 2-3 years before he became really big. Jake Daniels, who many of you may be watching, he's doing a lot of high stakes poker on Poker Go and WPT. He came on my show a couple years ago. He's actually an incredible golfer and taught me a lot. He's the one that taught me how to chip and got me down to a really low handicap. So without him, I wouldn't be there.
What's the funniest thing you can remember from one of the shows? If you can give me something something like
behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind or on, doesn't matter.
So I have one funny thing. So I have so I do a liner at the end of every single segment, and so it'll say like, whatever. Hi, this is Daniel Legrano, and you're listening to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. So like every guest does that liner, and it's an outro to segment 1. And I'll do like every anniversary, I'll have, hi, this is Daniel Legrano. Hi, this is Mike Sexton. Hi, this is Maria Ho. Hi, this is, et cetera. And, and then Greg Raymer will say, hey, this is Greg Raymer. Congratulations to Bernard Lee on his 14th anniversary, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So most people, 2 or 3 takes, we do a couple takes just to be as a backup. Some people like, Richard Roper is a pro. He'll do it on 1 shot. A lot of these guys will do it on 1 shot. But I had one guy who just couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. Like after you mess up 3 or 4 times, write it down. Nope. Sure. Just couldn't get it. Couldn't say Bernard Lee Poker Show. It was like Bernard Lee Show, Lee Show, Lee Poker, like Lee Poker Podcast. Like I was like, whoa. And then couldn't really. So it's like, they always say like, hey, this is Phil Hellmuth 15. Like, so name what you've done, my show. And after them messing, not doing it well for 5, 6, 7, 8 times, I kept saying, well, why don't we try it again? Why don't we try it again? And the person asked, why are we doing this over and over and over and over again? And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, they don't realize they're messing up. And I just was like, oh, no worries, no problem. Yeah, it's good. We've got a good take. We'll take it. And I literally had to edit it 3 together.
Yeah.
Because, and they really had no idea that happened. Right. So anyway, that's a kind of a funny, weird, maybe people don't find it that funny, but for me, it was a very funny story behind the scenes. I've had some really great moments that Jack Binion was probably number 1. It wasn't expected. Phil Hellmuth's 30th anniversary of his win, I wrote a column for ESPN, talked to Mike Sexton, may he rest in peace, and said, hey, is any way I could talk with Jack? And they said, well, let me ask him. And 30 minutes later, he goes, call Jack at this number right now. He's free. And what was supposed to be 5 minutes ended up being an hour and a half. So that was incredible. Interviewing Doyle, that was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
That was, then there's other things like Peter Eastgate.
Yeah. Peter
Eastgate's 10th year anniversary. He had fallen off the face of the earth. No one even knew where he was. And I just texted him and said, hey, listen, it's your 10th anniversary. You want to do an interview? Really, honestly, never expecting him to get back to me, but I just do it anyway. Texted me back going, when? I go, when?
It's funny you say that because obviously I don't have the experience that you do with poker and everything, but I've had a great response from poker players saying, yeah, come on. I mean, I got Mike Mattisau in half an hour answering my email, and different people like that. And I'm going to have, this is a funny one, William Chung, who's saying, she bangs, she bangs. He plays poker. He's going to come on.
William Hung.
Yeah.
Not Chung, Hung.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
William Hung.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. He I've known him for a while. He comes to our charity events.
He seems so nice.
Yeah, nice guy. Very nice guy. Yeah. So, like, there's I've been very fortunate over 14 years to have a lot of great guests. My first guest ever was Alex Jacob, who, if people remember, did incredibly well in Jeopardy. So when I did my 10th anniversary, I tried to have him on, and we had it all scheduled, but he works full time. And literally at the last second, he had a meeting called and he goes, I can't do it right now. And we just never got around to it. I've had on almost so many World Series main event champion. Eric Seidel, that was a great one. And I'm trying to get him on again because he just won a bracelet, his 9th bracelet. But
yes,
we were at PokerStars Caribbean Adventure. We were flying. He's not from Massachusetts, originally from New York, but he lives in Vegas. And we're flying out to the World Series was it the World Series? I forget if it was the World Series. Yeah, it was the World Series. It was the World Series. I'll remember why. Because his daughter, or I don't remember if daughter or son graduated college, and so he was there. So we're flying to the World Series, and I said, "Hey, Eric, I'm Bernard Lee." He goes, "I know who you are." Like, he knew who I was, and he was telling me these stories how Joanda in 2005, during some of the breaks, mentioned me, saying, "Hey, this kid, I don't know who he is, but he's playing really well." Like, I was like, "Oh my God," I'm so so thrilled that this is going on. And wouldn't you know, we sit in the plane and he sits right next to me. Like I'm in the aisle, he's in the next aisle, like right next to us. So we chatted off and on the whole way. Like, he's not that talkative, so it's not like it. But he gave me his number, right? Like, not everyone's going to give you their number, but he's like, yeah, here's my number, whatever, call me whenever. I don't bother him on a regular basis, but we were at PokerStars Caribbean Adventure, and I said, "Hey, Eric, you mind giving me like 30 minutes for an interview?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And so went back to his room, did an interview. I mean, there's certain moments in time that you do stuff, and it's really cool. I've enjoyed it. Obviously I'm on 14 years. 15 years is a given. In all honesty, 20 years is a given. It's just a question of how much longer I'll do it past that, because I've just enjoyed it, and I enjoy doing it. And I think a lot of people, the reason why they like the podcast is a couple of, I'm still a fan at heart. And so when I ask my question, I do a lot of research for these guys, so I'll know all their stats and everything, but I ask them questions that I think a fan would want to ask, because I try to go into that mode. And so I'll get a lot of people who will text me or DM me or whatever, and email me and saying, like, that's exactly the question I would have wanted to ask them. Or, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. I really want to know the answer to that kind of thing." So, I try to ask people questions of what they would like to ask. And then also I ask some strategy questions. If somebody's really good at, playing the big stack, well, how do you play the big stack? Someone's really good at short stack. How do you play short stack? Someone's really good at PLO. How do you play? We've had shows like that where we bring on people and all they do is talk about the specific mix game. So, fortunate.
That being said, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How do you play the small deck?
Short deck?
Short deck.
Yeah, I know how to play it, but I don't really play it. I don't need to master a new game. I'm not going to master it. These guys are all so good at it already. It's too late.
One quick question before, and I'll let you go off that. How has poker changed over the years from when you started till now?
So poker, back when I made my deep run in 2005, was all pre-flop. It was pre-flop play. People got it all in 60, 70 big blinds. You got aces, jam it. Let's go. Like, I got jacks. I'm never going to do better than jacks. Let's go. I mean, someone calls my all in with pocket fours. I mean, like, what? Like, you just don't get it. So it was a very pre-flop game back then. Now it's so post-flop. Now it's trying to understand. Now it's different, right? In addition to that, it used to be online players were bad. Now they're great because they've seen so many people. And then here's the other thing that I've had this discussion with many people. It used to be that you don't want to judge a book by its covers, but a lot of times you could kind of make an assumption. If you see a gentleman who is significantly older, they're going to be pretty old school, right? They may raise, Yeah, they may raise 4 or 5 times instead of 2.5, maybe 3x. They're going to be pretty tight.
If they raise, they got something good.
Yeah, if they raise from under the gun, they got something good, right? If they 3-bet you, you're in trouble, right? You're in trouble. I got King Jack in the cutoff, and this guy 3-bets me. I'm not ahead. I could be crushed, right? But in today's world, these guys have access to the internet just like we do. I'm sure they have kids and grandkids who show them how to get on these training sites. And some of them do like 3-bet light. And you're just like, what? How in the hell did you just 3-bet me there with 7-8 offsuit? Yeah. And they're doing it. And so it's a very different world now where you can't assume anything. And these players are, it's the game's so much harder than it was. I mean, before you just sat back, played pretty ABC poker, watched somebody blow up in front of you, and you could do pretty well. I mean, I would come home weekend after trip, and I'd bring home significant checks. And my wife was like, "Is it really that easy?" I go, "No, it's pretty hard work, but
it's doable.
It's doable." Now, yeah, it's not. You're not coming home with a 5-figure check every single time. There's no way. I mean, there's just no way. It's not only does luck have to always play in your favor, but the players are just that much better. And the other thing is that when it gets down to the final 2 or 3 tables, the cream always is going to rise to the top. Yeah. And so when you're playing down there, you're always playing against good players. This isn't just, I'm out of the 18 players that are left, only 6 of us are pretty decent. No. I mean, if there's 2 people who aren't decent, you're lucky. You're lucky. And usually they have like this massive stack because that's why they got there. They got ridiculously lucky. Yeah, they got there because they got ridiculously lucky, right? It's not like they got there and they snuck in. That's usually not the case.
One quick plug for the Bernard Lee Poker Show, and I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, I say, it's kind of like hot wings. This camera is for you, whatever. But Bernard Lee Poker Show, you can find iTunes, cardplayerlifestyle.com. I said on YouTube, I pretty much am now putting up all of my interviews up there. Follow me on, subscribe to my YouTube page, and follow me on Twitter, Bernard Lee Poker, Instagram. If you have any interest in playing in main events, sorry that I'm plugging my own book, but I think this is a must. For the irony is that for $25, you're going to be able to potentially, as the book says, turn affordable buy-ins into shots at winning millions. Right. And it may not be millions, it may be tens of thousands or whatever it is. But if you have any interest in playing satellites, or you ever think about playing satellites, it just has to be in there, because it's got stuff in there that no other book in the industry has. And for better or worse, I've had a lot of experience playing satellites, and it is definitely something that if you want to have a shot at playing in a main event one day, you just have to read it. You just have to know some of the little tricks of the trade that I have used over time to score in satellites.
Well, Bernard, I want to thank you so much for coming on. So I've had a blast talking to you today. It's been
great,
really enjoyable. And I hope your radio show continues to do well. I'm sure it will. And I hope to talk to you soon. I hope that if anyone's out there watching, please like and subscribe, and go on to Bernard's show, like and subscribe, and share it with your friends. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you calling. We're going to be back with my top 10 favorite vloggers right after this. You are listening to and watching Poker with G-Pa. Hey everybody, it is now time for my 10 favorite vloggers. These aren't necessarily the best vloggers, but they're my favorites. 1 is Next Gen Poker. How can you not like these 3 college guys? You got Frankie, you got Jack, and you have Rosie. These guys started out probably about a year ago, and I started watching from day 1, and I got hooked. They've moved up the ladder, and they're now in the top echelon of vloggers. Number 2, Brad Owens. Brad Owens is the reason why I watched vloggers now. I was flipping through YouTube one time. I saw his, and he produces a lot of content, and he does a great job. So number 2 is Brad Owens. Number 3 is none other than Johnny Vibes. Not only is he a great vlogger, he's also a great poker player, and he does give positive vibes. Number 4 is Andrew Nemi. He is the leader of the poker vloggers. He started before most of the vloggers, and he set the tone, and he does a great job. Number 5, everyone's favorite, Ryan DePaulo. Ryan DePaulo is a little harsh, a little crash, but you gotta like it. He does a great job, and it's just nasty, and it's a great vlog. Number 6 is Molly Cordero. Molly's also a vlogger, and she does a great job as well, and puts out a lot of content and does a great job with the content. Number 7, Old Man Coffee. A lot of you might disagree with this decision, but like I am an old man, and he's not the best poker player, he's not the best vlogger, but he tries the hardest. So number 7 goes to Old Man Coffee. Number 8 is Lex. Lex leaves everything on his sleeve. He puts everything on his sleeve. He tells you what he feels. He tells you when he's angry. He tells you when he's upset. Tells you when he's happy playing poker. So number 8 is Lex. Number 9 is Poker Face Ash. She always has a smile on her face. She's always doing her vlogs. She includes her friends. She puts out a good product. So number 9 is Poker Face. And number 10 is the Poker Beast. And that's just exactly what he is. He is a beast on the felt. And he does a great job as well with his vlogs. So there you have it. Those are my 10 favorite vlogs. Please subscribe and like the page. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on Poker with GPA. Out.